suicidal scientists, the night sky blinking off and on. What do these have to do with the countercultural revolution in China in the 60s? Let's find out. That's what we have to unpack for Three Body Problem Episode 1, entitled Countdown. Welcome back to the channel. This is Sean's Take. My name is Sean Redman. I am your host. And today we're talking about the first episode of Three Body Problem on Netflix. This is your spoiler warning. From here on out, I'll assume you've seen the episode or don't care if I ruin it. I will be using some clips from the show as is allowed under the fair use provision of the copyright laws of 1976. All right, let's get into it. So we start this episode in 1966 China, where the counter-revolution is having one of their rallies and things. So let's talk about that for a second. 1966 is starting to be a long time ago. And this counter-revolution that we saw, these meetings that we see in this episode, are real things from that time. The person who led this was Mao Zedong, or known as Chairman Mao. And it was to purge all capitalism out of the Chinese version of communism. And we see in this episode how extreme it was and how extreme people can get. And, they're all holding their manifesto books and saluting and, chanting. And, they went so far as the physics teacher teaching the Big Bang Theory, strangely, leaving room for God was enough to kill him. And they beat him to death on the stage. And it was such if that's not violent enough for you, it was so violent and it was so radical and it was so extreme that his wife turned on him publicly, basically condemned him. I don't think she knew she condemned him to die, but she was probably smart enough to understand if you just shut up, then they'll leave you alone. We see in the crowd that couple's daughter watching her father be at first humiliated and questioned and then beaten to his death. So that's her origin story. She is then taken from that stage where she gave her father back his pipe, and she was taken to a hard labor camp, and she was assigned tree clearing. They were cutting down trees, just deforesting China. And she meets a guy, is befriended by a guy who she is befriended and later seduced by a reporter, mostly by giving her a book. And the book is Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. And Silent Spring's a real book. You can read it. Probably should. It's a science book mostly proclaiming the evils and the price we're going to pay for DDT if we continue to use it. And, a lot of what she prophesied in her book is true. Her book is discovered, but she caught the attention, or at least her existence in the hard labor camp, caught the attention of people at the installation. I think that's what we're calling it. Up on the hill, there's a big dish that she kept looking at, and they became aware that she was there. And she was one of her father's best students. So unlike Chairman Mao, his goons and his countercultural revolution that don't want to teach any science, these people want her to help them as they try to reach off of this planet to talk to or signal anybody that might be out there. She accepts the position, even though they tell her that if she walks in, she's never leaving. It's a lifetime sentence. And she immediately accepts it because she knows if she goes back to the hard labor camp, anything could happen, including what happened to her father. So I think that's all we did. That's 1967. Her father was killed in 1966. She got the job at the installation with the dish in 1967. And I think that's the last thing we did there. In the present, and I actually thought they should call it the present rather than 2024, but they call it 2024, which is the present. Currently, we follow Detective Clarence onto a crime scene, quote unquote crime scene, and there's numbers written all over the walls in what appears to be blood. And then we find the person has committed suicide and also gouged out their eyes but then wrote, I can still see it in blood on the wall with the countdown. And he says, Detective Clarence says, another countdown. So this isn't the first one, but it is another one. We see him check his board, his investigation board, and he has several people on it that we are meeting in this episode, including Vera Yi, who is a physicist working at a collider. Now, she is the daughter of the woman from China. I don't know if you made that connection. So the coupling of the woman in China in 1966 with the reporter produced a daughter named Vera. The woman from China ended up getting out of communist China at some point. Mao Zedong died in 1976, so maybe she got out then. Maybe they'll show us how she got out. I'm not sure. Because China's still communist. To get back to a Beatles reference, in their song Revolution, they do say, but if you go carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't going to make it with anyone anyhow. This is Chairman Mao, Mao Zedong. So Wenji, I think her name is Wenji Yi. So in China, they do the surname first, followed by the given name, the individual's name, right? So she's Yi Wenji, and her daughter is Vera Yi, as in the West we do it, given name, surname. So Wenji, Yi Wenji, got out of China, ended up teaching at Oxford, and 5 of her best students are these people. And we have Augie, I think her name is Augustine, Augie, who, as a scientist, has created a nanofiber that's revolutionizing everything. She has a startup company. Vera and her quote-unquote assistant, Saul, work at the collider. Jin, what was Jin's last? Jin Cheng, Jack, and Will. And they've all sort of gone their separate ways, but they're all doing great work. And they're the sort of the smart pack. And Augie and Jin are out drinking, and a nice British bloke tries to hit on them, and they lay some intelligence on him, and it scares him away. And we start to see that Augie is getting at first, what looks like a visual artifact, or some sort of little blip in her vision. First time we see it, it looks like it's on the screen of the karaoke machine, but then it comes again. And I didn't know if it was coming and going at first, but it does turn out very quickly that she's seeing the countdown. When we first see it, it's 2 days and some hours, minutes, and seconds. So I'm a little out of order here. We see Vera and Saul, the collider, and the lights are going to be shut off at midnight because everything we know about science is suddenly wrong, and every experiment they run is coming back as chaos, as if we don't understand anything anymore. Saul says he's going to keep working right up until they turn the lights off. And as Vera turns to leave, she asks him if he believes in God. And he says, no, I'm a scientist. And she leaves, and then we follow her down. I don't actually understand colliders or where it is she went, but she walked on this little catwalk, opens the gate, and dives to her death very far down into a pool of water, which I assume is part of the collider, although I'm not sure. I don't know, would have been. So she committed suicide. We do not know if she was seeing a countdown or if she just committed suicide because all of their lives' work is useless. So we do go to the funeral service, and there are monks there chanting and playing drums. Seemed like a nice service. And we find out that Augie is seeing the countdown. And a guy, an old white guy in a hat, comes in, pays his respects briefly, looks at Wing Ji, Vera's mother, and leaves. Our detective follows him when he leaves the funeral to his helicopter, and he takes off. We find out later that they tracked him, but lost him off the East Coast. Jin visits Wang Ji, Vera's mother, and it comes up that she had been playing a video game a lot in her final days, and that surprises Jin, and the mother shows her the VR headset that she was wearing to play, and Jin asks if she can have it. And there's no screen, there's no port, there's no nothing. After the funeral, Augie goes to smoke a cigarette, and it's funny how we all used to smoke, and now It looks so strange when somebody's smoking in a movie. And of course, her Bic lighter won't light. She won't light. And then you hear the click of the Zippo lighter, and she lights her cigarette. And the girl with the Zippo at first seems like she might be a Jehovah's Witness or some sort of religious cult recruiting. And Augie is polite but dismissive until the girl says, "How much time do you have left on your countdown?" Now, this is the first person that we've bumped into that knows that she has a countdown, knows what the countdown, maybe knows what the countdowns are. So in that conversation, Augie is instructed that she can stop the countdown by either ending her life's work, closing her business, stopping the nanofiber development, or by ending her life. And she says, you don't want it to get to zero. Nothing good ever happens when it gets to zero. And we're left with that. As proof, or a statement of power, I guess, she asks Augie if she's ever had the sky wink at her. She said, go look at the sky tomorrow night at midnight. And Augie takes Saul as an independent observer, and sure enough, the entire sky winks off and on in a pattern, and that's the cliffhanger of the episode. Now, full disclosure, I have not read the books. I have not watched ahead. I have only watched this episode, and I record this, and then I'll watch the next episode, record that one. So I think the blinking of the light might be a different countdown to something else, but we'll see. It was a good episode because they had to do a lot of information transfer to get us up to speed in the reality with a lot of exposition, and try not to be boring by having just a bunch of exposition. And they did it really, really well. So that gives me hope as we have this unfold that we're going to have a pretty interesting story. I would have liked it to have been a little clearer, the transition from the 60s to the 2020s, that's the same woman. And they made a big deal. They made a big deal of focusing on the teenage girl in the 60s that beat Vera's father to death, both when she did that and when she came and took Vera to the labor camp. So I'm wondering if we're going to meet her older, just a thought, or if we're going to see her demise in a different flashback. So a lot to do. A 3-body problem. So the title of the show, the title of the episode was Countdown. That makes sense. I do like the effect they're using for the optical countdown thing. It's a neat. So a 3-body problem is interesting. I don't know if, because I haven't read the books and I haven't watched ahead, I don't know if we find out why that applies to this story. But a 3-body problem is a physics problem, I guess, when 3 objects are circling a point. So we'll see. We'll have to look forward to that. If you haven't read the books, please feel free to comment what you think the 3-body problem is. I don't want spoilers in the comments for people that are experiencing this show one episode at a time like I am. Thank you for your cooperation. So that's it for this episode. I appreciate your time for this. Appreciate you being here. Go ahead and subscribe. We're going to do this one. We're going to do Discovery Season 5, their final. I'm going to try to do The Acolyte, although I'm a little afraid of that one. But it does have Carrie-Anne Moss in it, so I'll probably be okay. All right, so that's it for me this time. My name's Sean. This is Sean's Take, and I'll see you next time.